Ladies and gentlemen, Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Now, DISC gives us a tool to examine our lives. It enables our clients to examine their lives, and they start to live a life that's worth living. Their life has meaning. Their life has purpose. They understand how they think. They understand how they feel. They understand how they act, and they start to feel valuable. So in today's training, remember, the unexamined life is not worth living. Now, in this training, I'm going to show you one way to do a DISC debriefing. Now, there's many ways, and this is just one. When it comes to a DISC debrief, you can debrief the DISC report in one session. You could do it over one semester of your coaching program, or it could be one coaching program altogether. So if it was one session, it could be 1 hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours. If it was one semester, it could be 3 months. If it was one program, it could run over 12 sessions. And if you take your time when you go through the DISC report, when you prepare in advance, when you think through each of your questions, you'll realize that it's very easy to take this through one session, one semester, or one program. Now, one of the rules that I want you to follow is that you never give your coachee the report until you have debriefed professionally. And the reason why you would never give the coachee their report until you've debriefed it professionally is because it comes with some risks. Firstly, when a client goes through their DISC report, they aren't trained in DISC. They don't know what to look for. They can't see the correlations between each of the factors. They can't calculate the spread. The risk is, if you give them the report, they will read it like a newspaper, which is worth $1. They'll read it from cover to cover, and they'll only look for what's in their reticular activation system. They'll only look for things that they already agree with. And we call this a bias. Everybody has a bias towards their strengths, a bias towards their limitations. And we also call this selective attention. So what it means is they'll read through the DISC report from cover to cover, and they'll put no meaning into it at all. It'll just reaffirm what they already believe. If they believe they have strengths, it'll reinforce that. If they believe they have limitations and they see that, it'll reinforce that. But it won't expose to them other strengths that they are not aware of. You've heard me say it before. It's not what you know that hurts you. It's what you don't know. So remember, they're ignorant. They're going to misunderstand the terminology. They won't understand the complex equivalence, and it's for you to coach them through that. And remember what Carl Rogers once said: man can't be his own therapist. So you can give them the report and they can't be their own coach. They can read it from cover to cover and they'll never get the value out of it. It'll just be another PDF document. It'll just be some black words printed on white paper. So remember, man can't be his own therapist. And it applies for the ladies too. So let's dive deep into this. So when we see significant disparities or differences between the natural and the adapted style, there's going to be 4 reasons why. So just a quick reminder, disparity means difference. And what you'll see here is that the graph on the right, the natural style, looks significantly different to the graph on the left, the adapted style. There's a disparity here on the D style. There's a disparity on the S style, there's a disparity on the C style. And you'll notice that there is a lot of difference. See how this graph looks significantly different to this graph? And these are the things we want to explore. So remember, disparity means difference. And whenever there's a difference in the two graphs, there's 4 reasons. 1, the client could be adapting for survival. And what that means is that they could be going through a significant emotional event. It could be a Uden moment, things that came along unexpectedly. They were dramatic, they were isolating, and they had no coping mechanism. Or they're going through a crisis. And what you need to know is, because the world is moving at such a fast pace, because the world is so dynamic, we could be dealing with a crisis every 90 days. So the first reason could be survival. The second reason for the disparity is because of fear. And what you can see here very clearly right here is that there's an extended score. So what that tells us immediately is that this person is going to have a fear of losing their stability. And you can see the connection right there. And this could be one of the reasons why there's a disparity. Thirdly, it could be because of ignorance. Now remember, all humans are ignorant, and we don't know what we don't know. We just don't know what we don't know. And this could come down to poor leadership. Perhaps this individual's been promoted to a new role. Perhaps they've been moved to a new department. Perhaps they've applied for a new job and they were successful in their previous role, but the onboarding into the new business, into the new role, was not appropriate. And now they're trying to figure out who they need to be to get results. In addition, there could be no benchmark. And a benchmark sets the behaviours required for superior performance in any role. And I'd say 99% of businesses on the planet today do not have a benchmark for what superior performance looks like in the role. Most salespeople, they get the 3-step sales training. Sounds like this. Here's your business cards. There's the door. Go make sales. And they think it's going to be that easy. But then all of a sudden they get out into the real world, and those behaviors that they currently have don't lead to sales. So it could be ignorance. Or fourthly, this person could be a seeker. And in the work environment, with their adaptive style, they might be trying to be all things to all people in all situations. And that's why you'd have one of these unusual graphs here. We also call it a tight graph, where all the scores are very close to the energy line, right there at 50. It means they're trying to be all things to all people. So there are 4 reasons why we see disparities, and disparity means difference. So we want to have a look at that when we first look at the report. We then want to start to have a look at the spread and the tendency. So you remember us doing this the other day. We want to have a look at the differences from the graph on the right to the graph on the left. So if we have a look at the D style here, the D style goes up by 32 points, and that's strong. We can see the I style goes up by 21 points. That's strong. We can see that there's an adaptation here, and the S style goes down by 43 points. And we can see here that the I style remains consistent. So just by looking at those arrows, you can see that all of that energy is moving all over the place. And there's a significant disparity. So we know that the behaviors from their natural style are going to be significantly different to the behaviors in their adapted style. And because it requires a lot of energy, they're going to have to shift around their energy. This person is going to put more energy into getting results. They're going to put more energy into getting recognition. They're going to take a lot of that energy out of relationships from where they're going really slow, and they're going to start to speed up. And then we can see that C style remains consistent. So imagine this every day. This person has to shift their energy from their natural style to their adapted style. They have to put on a mask. They have to become somebody that they're not. And the person who they are in the morning is different to the person they are during the day. And when they go home, they have to become that person they normally are at home. And that can cause a lot of confusion. It can create a lot of inner conflict. And it's only a matter of time until that person breaks. They break down. They start to burn out. And it's only a matter of time. For some people, and if you're new to a business, normally the cracks start to appear in the first 10 to 12 weeks. So if you hire the wrong person for the job, you might start to see these adaptations, and within 10 to 12 weeks, they're already burned out. Some people, they might have been doing this for an extremely long period. So now they'll have low energy, low motivation, dissatisfaction. They won't know who they are. A lot of people have told me, they said, Daniel, the only thing I got after 30 years of working in corporate was bad health and not knowing who I was. Keep that in mind. So you can see the energy's going all over the place. And what we have to do is we now have to have a look at some descriptive words. What are the descriptive words that describe these disc factors? So when we have a look at the natural and the adapted style, we're going to have very different descriptive words for these factors. So first of all, we have the descriptive word for the disc style, adapted, and then we have the descriptive word for the disc style, natural. So when this person is attempting to get results in their personal life, their natural style, they're going to approach results in a very unobtrusive way. But with their adaptation, they're going to approach results in a very determined manner in the workplace. And that could create confusion over time. We're now having a look at the I style. The I style descriptor for the adapted is rational, and for the I style natural, it is contemplative. So in the workplace, adapted, this individual is going to approach people with a very rational approach. However, at home, when they're in the comfort zone, with their natural style, they're going to approach people and contacts in a very contemplative manner. Now, this may or may not be getting results. These are things we're just looking for before we go into our coaching session. When it comes to their S style, the way they approach relationships in the business world, adapted style, is going to be in a composed manner. However, at home with their natural style, they're going to approach relationships in a very loyal manner. That's their descriptive words for their factors. When we have a look at the C style, we can see that the word here remains the same. How they approach procedures and constraints, both professionally and personally, both adapted and natural, they're going to approach procedures and constraints with high standards. So we want to have a look at these descriptive words. We want to have a look at the behaviors, and then we want to understand, are these getting results or not? So these are the descriptive words. These are words that we're going to have a conversation around with our client. So as we move through the coaching, we now want to explore these factors. Now, we're looking at the D, the I, the S, and the C factors. We're having a look at what's going up. We're having a look at what's going down. We're having a look at what remains the same. And then we want to ask some good questions. And we always prepare these questions in advance. So we know that the D style factor is going up. We can see that. So the question we want to be asking our coachee is this: what in the work environment is causing you to focus more on results? That's the first question. Because what we can see here is there's more energy in the D style, which means they're going to focus more on results. And we want to explore this. So we'll ask the coachee, what in the work environment is causing you to focus more on results? Now that conversation could go for 5, 10, 15, or 20 minutes. We just don't know. Because remember, we're also learning about the client. We're in the discovery mode. We're helping them understand themselves. We're trying to understand the coachee. So we'll be asking, what in the work environment is causing you to focus more on results? Once we get enough information to understand the situation, we'll then ask the second question. Now, remember, the I style, there's also more energy going into the I style. So the factor is going up. And we'll be asking the client a very similar question. What in the work environment is causing you to focus more on people and contacts? Remember, people and contacts is the P and C word. That's the P and C word for the I style, people and contacts. So we want to explore what in the work environment is causing you to focus on more on people and contacts. And we want to listen. We want to learn. We want the client to explain, and then we can go on a deep dive with them. Once we've done that, the next follow-up question is this. What in the work environment is causing you to focus less on relationships? Now, we're asking the word less because we can see that S style drops all the way down from 98 through to 55. So the question is, what in the work environment is causing you to focus less on relationships? And again, we want to explore this and we want the client to explain it so we can understand the situation. Now, in addition, we're also having a look at the factors that remain the same. And as we said before, the C style remains the same. It's consistent. So the question is this. What in the work environment is causing you to maintain high standards? Because that C factor doesn't go up, it doesn't go down, it remains the same. So the question is, what in the work environment is causing you to maintain high standards? And we want to learn about the client's situation. So whenever you see these factors going up or down or remaining the same, the question's going to be, what in the work environment is causing you to focus more on results because the factor's going up, focus more on people and contacts, the factor's going up, focus less on relationships because that factor is going down, and then C, to maintain high standards. It remains the same, so it's maintained. And we want to explore. Now, as I mentioned before, this could go for one session. It could go for one semester. It could go for one program. It's not a rush. It's not a race. The better the client understands themselves, which we call self-awareness, the greater self-regulation they'll have later on. It all starts with awareness, then it leads to regulation, then it leads to motivation. So once we've explored this and we've got enough details, then we're going to move on. The next thing is we want to explore their adapted approach. And what we really want to understand, is this helping them or hurting them? How is it helping them or hurting them? And who needs to know? So there's a series of questions here followed by follow-up questions. So now we're exploring their adapted approach. So the question that I've created here is this. I've had a look at the descriptive words, as we did before, determined, rational, composed, and high standards. I'm combining those with the P and C words, results, recognition, relationships, right. They're our R words. And I'm going to formulate some questions, and I'm just specifically focusing on the adapted style. So for the D factor, it's going up, I factor going up, S factor going down, C factor remaining the same. The question that I'm going to ask here for the D style is this: is this determined approach getting the results you want? They're going to give us a yes or a no. Then we're going to ask, how does this help or how does it hurt you? Does it help or does it hurt you? And then we're going to ask them to explain it to us by asking how. How does that help you? How does that hurt you? And then once we've explored that, we'll ask them the who question. Who needs to know about this? So, for example, is this determined approach getting the results you want? The answer is yes. Is this helping or hurting you? It's helping me. How does it help you? Well, what's happening is I'm much more aggressive as I get these results. I'm really determined. I'm focused on my goal. I feel really energetic. I'm moving fast. Excellent. Well, who needs to know about this? Well, my wife needs to know about this because that'll help her understand why I'm so fatigued when I come home. My boss needs to understand this, that I need to leave work at 5 because I'm absolutely exhausted because I've got 16 hours worth of results in 8 hours. Who else needs to know? My children need to know. They need to know I'm not angry at them. I'm just aggressive when it comes to getting these results. Now, that's just an example. We want the client to explore this because, as we said before, the unexamined life is not worth living. And this gives the coachee the opportunity to examine their life. So as we said before, the I style, the factors going up. The key word is rational. And what does the I style want? They want recognition. So my question is this: is this rational approach getting you the recognition you want? Yes or no? Does that help or hurt you? How does that help or hurt you? And who needs to know about this? So the formula repeats. It repeats for each factor, and we're just going to adapt it accordingly. S style. Is this composed approach getting you the relationships that you want? Yes or no? Does it help or hurt you? How does it help or hurt you? And who needs to know about this? C style. Is this high standards approach getting things right? Does it help or hurt? How does it help or hurt? Who needs to know about this? Now, as I mentioned before, these questions, you can take a real deep dive into these questions. You could be exploring these for one session, one semester, or for one program. It is not a race. People have to really think slowly and deeply. They need to go through a trans-derivational search. They need to go through all those layers of meaning. And once they get meaning, they find purpose. And as we said before, the unexamined life is not worth living. The other thing I said was man can't be his own therapist. People cannot sit there and formulate and ask themselves and respond to their own questions effectively. Self-coaching at this level just does not work. They're at the start of their journey. They can self-coach later on, but never at this level. It's your job as the coach to coach them through the report. Once we've explored the adapted approach, we then want to have a look at the natural approach. And again, we can see the natural style just here. And we're starting to have a look at the R words, the P and C words, etc. And we're going to formulate questions. So these are the questions I've asked. What happens when you approach results in an unobtrusive way? So essentially I'm asking them, when you approach results with your natural unobtrusive way, what happens? Does that help or hurt you? How does it help or hurt? Who needs to know about this? Secondly, what happens when you approach people in a contemplative manner? Does that help or hurt? How? Who needs to know about this? What happens when you maintain loyal relationships? How does that help or hurt you? How does it hurt? And who needs to know? And then what happens when you approach procedures with high standards? Does this help or hurt? How does it help or hurt? And who needs to know? So you can see here that through one DISC report, you can take a client through one session, one semester, or one program. This is not a race. You're not trying to get to the finish line first. What you're attempting to do is to bring meaning and purpose to all areas of life. And as you do that, people will have a higher level of self-awareness. Once they have a higher level of self-awareness, they'll have a higher level of self-regulation. And once they're aware, once they can regulate, then they'll have more motivation. And I promise you this, there's nobody on the planet who's lost their job because they were too motivated to get results. I can guarantee that. So let's have a quick overview of today's training. First of all, the unexamined life is not worth living. Remember that. The unexamined life is not worth living. Your DISC debrief can be spread over one session, one semester, or one program. And you never, ever, ever, under any circumstance, give your coachee the report until you have debriefed it professionally. There's risks involved if you do. Number one, they have a bias. They have selective attention. They'll have a look and they'll accept what they agree with and they'll reject everything that they disagree with. Secondly, they'll misunderstand the terminology. They're not the expert. You're the expert. And finally, man cannot be his own therapist. These people are not in a position to self-coach at this stage. They're at the start of the journey, and that's why they need you. Remember, when you see a disparity, when you see a difference between the adapted and the natural style, there's going to be 4 reasons why this occurs. Firstly, because of survival. And there could be a significant emotional event that's just occurred. There might have been a crisis, and they might be in the middle of it right now. They could be driven by fear rather than optimism. And you can see it there. That S style is 98. That's an extended score. It's where the want of stability moves into a need for stability. And this person may be creating situations. They might even be self-sabotaging so they don't have to leave their comfort zone. Thirdly, these disparities could be because of ignorance. It could be from poor leadership and no benchmark. And as I said, 99% of businesses around the world do not have a benchmark for superior for performance. And what that means is when a new performer comes into the business, they don't know the behaviors required to get the results they need for success. And fourthly, this person could be a seeker. They're trying to be all things to all people in all situations. Once you have a look at the adapted and the natural styles, you want to have a look at the spread and you want to have a look at the tendency. What are the differences between the natural and adapted style? How much energy is being shifted from the natural to the adapted style? You then want to have a look at the descriptive words, and you can have a look at the descriptive words section in their DISC report. What are the words that describe their adapted style? Determined, rational, composed, high standards. What are the words that describe their natural style? Unobtrusive, contemplative, loyal, high standards. We call this the word sketch, and it's important that you map it out and you put it down on paper so you understand their behaviors and you can demonstrate to the client or the coachee their behaviors. Then we're going to tie these in together. We're going to understand the factors going up, the factors going down, and what remains the same. We're going to ask questions there. We're going to ask questions around the adapted approach. How does it help? How does it hurt? How does it hurt? And who needs to know? We're also going to explore their natural approach. We're going to ask them some really well thought out questions. how this approach helps or hurts, and who needs to know about this. And as you do this, the client will increase their level of self-awareness. Once they increase their level of self-awareness, they can regulate their thoughts, their feelings, their actions. And once they do that, they'll make better decisions, they'll take the right actions, and they'll get the results that they want, and they'll get them consistently. So now that you've been through this training, I want you to leave a message in the comments section below and just share with me one thing that you've learned and how you're going to apply that learning immediately. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon.